What's good, folks, and welcome to a post-2023 NFL Draft episode of the Cover One Film Room. I am one of your two hosts this evening, Anthony Prohaska, joined by Erik Turner. Erik, felt like it always feels like everything in the offseason, once like the NFL season is done, it feels like
Yeah.
everything just is building, and even free agency to a degree, everything is building to the draft and building to the draft, and it's just building and culminating, and this mountain gets bigger and the snowball gets bigger, and then the draft happens, and I don't know what to do with myself for like the couple weeks after. Like, I feel like the draft becomes such like an ingrained part of our fiber and our being that it always takes me like a bit of it. I have a bit of a come down period in the weeks after. And part of that come down period is what we're going to be doing tonight in breaking down some game tape for the Buffalo Bills draft picks and one of their new additions, Mr. Poona Ford, a signing that was announced yesterday. So, Erik, we got a lot of fun stuff in store for tonight's episode. But how are you feeling now that, the draft is over and we've kind of, the dust has settled a bit from the prospect evaluation piece. And now we're starting to project things going forward to the NFL and becoming more Bills focused and kind of rounding things into form.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. Post-draft is some of the more exciting times for you and I, just because we love to, dive into the film, the analytics, who the Bills drafted, who they, what type of DNA they have. And that's really, really fun for us. But it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work, So we have this show and preparing for this show, you have Disguised coverage as well, and 4 other shows that you appear on every week. I'm doing, specific breakdowns on right now. I've been working on Kincaid. I've watched all of his film from 2021, anything I could get on from 2022, ever since the night they drafted him. So it's a lot of work, but it is the most fun. And we're going to dive into a bunch of that stuff tonight. But as you said, man, Poona Ford is in Buffalo. He signed with Buffalo. Greg Thompson manifested it several weeks ago, and the big boy signed in the Buffalo Bills. And I'm excited. I really liked Ford coming out of college. He's a guy that I heavily scouted, just like we just went through this whole process. I went through it with him, and he was a guy that was on as a target for the Bills years ago. And so I'm excited that they brought him on board.
I like the player in and of himself, but I was just excited to see like reinforcements for the D line. I don't think I've been a stranger to banging the drum for defensive line support. And Erik, like you put out in your tweet yesterday and something you and I were talking about over text today, the front his front versatility and the alignments that he was used in, I wasn't anticipating that. Like I figured, okay, like some 1-tech stuff, maybe some 3-tech stuff, but he was used a lot in some odd fronts. He was used in a 4-eye oftentimes, and just different alignment pieces, which I thought was exciting. In addition to some of the splash plays he made on the tape that, you put together and cut up here.
Yeah, that was surprising. Obviously, Seattle, they've played a lot of 4-3 under Carroll, a lot of, nickel under type fronts. But they moved forward around a little more this year, as you said. And some of those DN type alignments in odd front looks. And it's weird because a lot of fans for the Seahawks thought he had a down year. I went back and watched the film, as you're seeing right here, and looked at the stats. I'm like, oh, that's a down year. That's a failure. I mean, that's a win in my book, especially if you're talking about bringing him on as a depth player for the Bills. And so I do expect him to play a lot of the backup nose tackles, reps behind Daquan, maybe even some of the early down reps, so you can save some of the juice of Daquan for those pass rush downs. Obviously, we love Daquan. He's very important. And when he was not healthy last year, you obviously saw how much of an effect that had on the defense. So bringing a guy like Ford, lower center of gravity, very tough to move, almost like a boulder. I say he's like a boulder to move. He's only able to be moved when he wants to move. Quick feet, especially in that short area, as you're seeing right here. And he's always active. For a guy his size and how thick he is, he's always active with his hands, his feet, and he's always just finding the ball. Sometimes he's not even looking at the ball. He just knows where that running back is going to enter into the line of scrimmage, and he's right there to make a play.
Yeah, I really liked his hand usage. That was my favorite initial reaction in watching some of his tape, especially kind of that forklift move that it's kind of termed, where he just like grabs that wrist and lifts and then uses it to pull himself through. Like you see it consistently. Like he establishes first contact, he lifts the wrist, he maintains wrist control. You see the quickness, you see the physicality. You see, I like the boulder comment because that's kind of what he is. He's like a little bowling ball, just with arms and legs that are sticking out. And it's nice to get a player with this quality experience and the reps that he has. Seattle was a playoff team last year. He was a significant piece on this defensive line. He's been a significant piece for them the past several years. 33 pressures in 2021, 23 pressures in 2022. But again, like Erik and I spoke about, some of his usage was different, which can speak
and
to.
And that's exciting though, right?
Yes,
that's exciting because it's kind of playing into this episode, first of all, but also to what we've been talking about with McDermott taking over. Maybe we're seeing a shift in philosophy. Maybe we're going to start to see some more a multiple front rather than just that. Hey, this is the nickel defense with the over front. Like maybe we see something a little different, and that's exciting again for guys like us. Because then we start to unleash all the possibilities onto the Twitter space and get you guys all excited for them to come back and probably only make a minor tweak. So
I was going to say to get everybody all hype and get us excited for them to do none of it. And we're like, oh, okay.
So yes, he offers some versatility. And when we talk not just versatility, but he's a different archetype. He's a different type of player than what the Bills have looked for in the past. The guy's 5'11". I mean, he's very short. This is not a typical archetype or type player for the Bills. So again, it's exciting. We'll see where it goes. He's a guy that has some versatility. I think he'll primarily man some of those, depth reps at nose tackle, but don't be surprised to see him at 3 tech. He's obviously also, a guy that is kind of insurance for some of the other guys that have gotten injured in the last couple of years, Jordan Phillips and whatnot. So I think he's good. He's a good player. I've always liked him. Very active, a little different, but very active, but he's going to be, it's going to be a good boost when you're talking about the waves that the Bills like to throw at opposing quarterbacks.
Absolutely. That point also ties into this question from M Stock, who says, Erik and Ant, do you think McDermott will continue to employ a heavy D-line rotation? As Erik said, yes, absolutely. Like that line change system on defensive line is pretty integral to what McDermott does. And honestly, I think we need to get to kind of a bit more of an understanding as a fan base that that's a common practice amongst a lot of teams. The 49ers do it a ton. The Philadelphia Eagles do it a ton. These teams that have really good defensive lines and primarily rush forward, or even ones that mix in different looks and pressure packages, they rotate heavily. It's a way to stay fresh. It's a way to try and gain an advantage from a condition standpoint against offensive linemen. So this isn't just a Bills thing. This is league wide at this point. You even see it in college now as well. And that's why I think, go ahead.
And with the style play that the Bills, employ with the attack oriented, the up the field, always basically playing the run en route to the quarterback, kind of like, who's that defensive coordinator? Jim Schwartz used to play. Hey, you're playing the run, but you're playing the run on your way to the quarterback as a pass rusher. So they're very attack oriented. So, these guys have a lot of juice and they're just always pinning their ears back. And again, it hurts them at times because they, may open a gap here or two, but I think that's a primary reason why they do roll so many defensive linemen onto the field, in and out, every single drive. You're going to see it. They'll go like 1 or 2 drives with the starters, and then that third drive is going to be all backups. It's just something that they've always done.
Yeah, and that's why a guy with like Poona Ford, who is going to be in that depth kind of role for the Bills interior, is exciting because you have a depth guy who's been a significant starter on another team. And then you add in his positional versatility and the juice he provides, which again, you are going to need. We don't know. Again, I don't want to, harp too much on the 2022 season, but Tim Settle had a disappointing year last year. You don't know what you're going to get from him in 2023. Jordan Phillips, if he's healthy, is a really good fit in this defense. Problem is he can just never stay healthy. You are going to need significant contributions on the interior defensive line from a multitude of players throughout the season. Again, we even saw that last year for a bit, especially early on when, the D-line was banged up. Brandon Bryant came in and played well, and you had Ilianku giving you some good reps. The problem was you just needed to rely on those guys a bit more as the season went on, with Settle going away and Daquan Jones going down and Phillips basically playing with one arm. So getting a proven guy who's a known quantity, who has a high floor, who also I think is cool. He wanted to come to Buffalo with the reports of him taking less money to come here.
Yeah.
You got a guy who wants to be here, who's bought in, who fits the system, but also offers you, some potential wrinkles and tweaks if you're leaning in certain philosophical changes and directions like we've outlined on this show. So a really exciting signing for the Buffalo Bills, just from a need standpoint, from a fit standpoint, in terms of moving forward for this 2023 season. And within that vein of moving forward towards the 2023 season, Erik, we got to stop.
You got to stop.
That's the rule. We got Ned here. Ned is a consistent viewer here in the film room, and I would say majority of our Cover One shows as a whole. Ned, thank you for being here as always. 2, thank you very much for the super chat. 3, thank you very much for the nice words at the beginning. He says, appreciate you guys and all the pre-draft work. Thank you for that, Ned. We appreciate you appreciating that. And he says, how much do you think the Ford signing helps Rousseau, Oliver, and Miller? Of course. ? Erik, you want to go first or want me?
Yeah, no, I'll go first. I think we're going to have to see how obviously he gels with some of the other guys, because it does take time. I know it's the defensive line, but it does take time to get the timing of a play, the timing of a rush, of a stunt. It's going to take some time. But I do think how active he is, and as Ant said, that bowling ball mentality, he's just going to create chaos. He's going to be disruptive. And that's what they need from the defensive line. Again, that's what they've always wanted from the defensive line. And, some of the struggles that they've had when turning pressures into sacks are obviously, we've talked about it ad nauseum, but his type of pass rush, if we're looking at it from that perspective, is just, again, creating chaos. He's always active. And so, yeah, he's going to be disruptive. He's going to free up some other guys at times. But it might take time just trying to get that rhythm and timing down among his teammates.
Excellent point. You do have to gel. You need to build that chemistry. I love the disruption piece and the chaos piece you brought up, because you've got someone like Greg Rousseau who, I don't use this as like a backhanded compliment, is tremendous at being that cleanup guy going back to his time at Miami. So if you've got another disruptor on the interior and you've got a long-limbed guy like Greg Rousseau on the edge, or Von Miller potentially when he comes back, these guys who are able to kind of read and flow, and you've got that initial chaos creator and disruptor on the inside, in addition to the roles and hats that he can wear. I think it's a good fit. I'm excited for some potential developments from there. Oh, and then Ned says, quick follow-up. You didn't give a super chat for this one, so we're not going to answer this question. Just kidding. Ned says, quick follow-up. How do you think he compares to Star Lotulelei and Jordan Phillips? I didn't think we'd ever hear Star's name back again in these parts.
Yeah, he's a little different. As we said, he's a different type of player when you're looking at his physical makeup. And so I think when it comes from the shoulders up, he's very similar. He's very good at reading blocking concepts. And you can almost see it. It's almost like in slow motion when those guys in the offensive line fire out of their stances, he's watching both sides. And that's what read type defensive tackles and DNs are taught to do, is read the footwork and how they're firing out and the way they're stepping, so they understand what type of run blocking concept or what type of block is coming at them. He's very similar in that regard. He just doesn't have the length of Star or of Phillips. And so I think from the shoulders up, they're very similar, but again, physically, very, very different.
I was going to say the frame is the biggest one for me in terms of pointing out their differences. The mentality is somewhat similar, even some kind of the play style pieces. But when you're on the shorter end, and on the shorter end in terms of arm length, it changes how you play. It changes how you have to work. It's a main reason. It's not just, tradition or just a crux that people look to, but there's a reason why there's, arm length thresholds for offensive linemen and defensive linemen. Like that frame piece, as annoying as it is, legitimately comes into play. And so he has to operate a bit differently. That's, I think, where you see more of the technique piece from him. Well, you're not going to see him like long arm, because he doesn't have long arms. Like, he needs to lift the wrist. He needs to win with that quickness and leverage. But also, again, because he is on the shorter end, he can get under guys a little more and kind of work through them and gum up the works a little bit. So it's a good signing. It's exciting, again, especially for a depth piece to add to the Buffalo Bills roster. And now we continue to focus on the Buffalo Bills roster. But Erik, we focus on the Buffalo Bills roster from the perspective of their 2023 draft class, a draft class that I think everyone saw all these moves coming. Everyone knew it was going to be Dalton Kincaid. They knew O'Cyrus Torrence was going to fall. Everybody was super excited to see Dorian Willams, another linebacker, be taken in the 3rd round. Everything that was just super predictable and everyone saw coming. Just kidding. It was pretty eventful draft class with, just Bean trading up again for a guy that, I like Kincaid. I didn't think he was going to get past the Chargers. I thought Green Bay could take him. I definitely didn't think he'd go, past Dallas. I didn't expect or anticipate Buffalo loving him to the point that they would trade up, and then Torrance falls. And again, they go linebacker in the third. But this was a draft class that offers a decent amount of variety in terms of 2023 contributions, 2024 and beyond contributions, but also potentially give us a couple more breadcrumbs or puzzle pieces in trying to put together what this Buffalo Bills team will look like in 2023 from a schematic and X's and O's standpoint. And maybe the biggest, guy involved in that conversation is the Bills' first round pick, Mr. Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about the guys that they drafted, whether they're on offense or defense, there's some sort of evolution happening. There's some sort of tweaks in philosophy happening, right? On offense, it's, hey, they got bigger, they got stronger, they want to be more physical, right? Same concepts, but different personnel groupings probably going to be run with some of these concepts in 2023. On defense, it was, hey, with McDermott coming in, you have a more diverse scheme. We would hope more multiple, obviously probably a little more aggressive than Leslie Frazier. And in all, on both sides of the ball, it's the, starting to dictate things more. We've always talked about it. Hey, they're always passive and reactive. Now they're going to start to dictate things. And that's what we hope, the evolution that we're seeing with all these pieces being brought in, how that's changing. And you're right. It starts with that first round pick in Kincaid. Did we think that they were going to take a tight end sometime? Yeah. I mean, it showed when you talk about the people they talked to at the different events and visits and stuff like that. I didn't expect it to happen in the first round, but I also didn't expect Dalton Kincaid to fall that far in the first round. So he's exciting because, you heard Bean talk about Cole Beasley, and it's funny because for weeks we were saying, hey, we need someone to control the middle of the field. We need dependable receivers because there's so many drops and interceptions over the middle of the field. Josh became gun shy throwing over the middle because of all those things. And we were thinking about it from a slot receiver standpoint. We weren't thinking about it from a tight end standpoint. And so they went out and got a guy that can be that high volume, maybe not all in year one, but he can be in the future, years 2 to 3 and beyond. He can be that high volume, efficient chain mover that Cole Beasley was. The guy that Josh Allen leans on when, he's looking at a different receiver as his primary target. That guy's not open. Second guy in that progression is not open. Okay, I got to get rid of the ball late in the play. Find Dalton Kincaid instead of Cole Beasley. So he's that type of guy, which is really exciting. He can be, again, in a few years, he can be that guy that soaks up a lot of those targets, I think, that Cole Beasley did for this offense when the offense was at its best.
You nailed it. When this offense was at its best, it had an effective slot receiver in Cole Beasley. I mean, he got an all-pro vote for just being exclusively a slot receiver, something you do not see. And his ability to win versus man and zone and be able to see things quickly and accurately and on the same plane with Josh Allen. He was, Diggs was Allen's go-to guy, but Beasley was a significant part of this offense. And arguably Josh's biggest safety net and biggest security blanket was Cole Beasley, just knowing that, okay, you know what, it's third and whatever, Cole's going to win. And he could win in a variety of ways and kind of do whatever. And you get Dalton Kincaid, who is a tight end, but for all intents and purposes, I love that comment. Roadhouse is one of my favorite movies ever, so that's absolutely fantastic. For those listening on audio only, the comment was Dalton Roadhouse Kincaid, so I think that's absolutely fantastic. And with Kincaid, you get someone who is a tight end, but is really in the mold and vein of almost like a power slot receiver, and he's extremely effective in the slot. There were 77 players in 2022 that had at least 50 targets in the slot. And this could be anybody. It could be wide receiver, tight end, running back, whoever. 77 players in 2022 that had at least 50 targets in the slot. Kincaid was third in EPA per target. He was 10th in total EPA. He was first in positive play percentage. He was fifth in yards per route run. He was fifth in yards per target. He was fourth in first down percentage, and he was ninth in broken tackles plus missed tackles forced per reception. You are getting someone who can function out of the slot, underneath, in the intermediate, going vertically and going up the seam. He's got a large catch radius. He's reliable with his hands. Erik, you've talked consistently about, his ability to kind of function in those Y option type looks. He's just a really smart processor. He's good pre to post snap with recognition and reading. And then you add in the physical tools and traits. And it's understandable why the Bills went up and got him, because he gives them another body in the vein of Cole Beasley with that idea in terms of controlling the middle, but obviously a much bigger body, a much bigger frame. And then that comes with the idea of potentially dictating the defenses. And as you put them in a bind with having to match your 12 personnel, quote unquote, but trying to do it with your nickel corner or a third linebacker or a third safety, and then playing all the mismatch games that come with it.
Yeah, and Roy Collins says, but he is a rookie. And that's true. That is true. And the tight end position is one that takes some time to develop. What I would say to that is they're not going to ask him to be a full-time tight end. That's the thing. They have Dawson Knox. And so they can, if they want to do a lot more 12 personnel, which you can only go up because they were one of the worst, if not the worst, I think 32nd overall, right? And 4.1%, I think, is how often they were in 12 personnel last year. So it can only go up. And so they're going to ask him to be that move tight end. And, as Anthony was talking about with all those stats, he was in the slot 48.8% of the time in his career, 55% last season. And so his what I like about him, obviously his size is very good, but his movement, it's hard to really kind of dictate and let people know what it looks like, but you can tell he played basketball, right?
Mm-hmm.
The movement, it's smooth. His body control is smooth. Insane spatial awareness, which is why he's so money against zone coverages. And then he's still got that like twitchiness, that reactive athleticism that basketball players have when, hey, they're boxing someone out. Oh, now they're going to go up quickly for a rebound. Like, he has that twitchiness to him when he wants to show it, but he only shows it at those break points when he creates that separation. And so he's really good. As you said, man, zone, he wins in both ways. And he's that chain mover, just like Cole Beasley. Someone said the third and medium, go to Beasley. Like, he's that type of guy. Listen to these stats. On 74.5% of his receptions from the slot over the last 2 years, he converted them into a first down or a touchdown. 74.5%. That's number ridiculous. One among tight ends and receivers in this class. So among wide receivers and tight ends, he turned first downs and touchdowns out of his receptions from the slot. Like, that is, you can't really replicate that. I mean, he's beating a lot of these wide receivers in this draft from the slot, and he's just keeping those chains moving. And that's why I'm excited about him. Maybe it doesn't happen on year one, but a lot of these skills we're going to talk about and we're going to show you on the film, they translate on Sunday. It's just how often, they're able to get him the ball, because when you do get him the ball, he catches it. He doesn't drop anything. He's got like a 1.6 drop rate, 1.6% drop rate, 2 drops on 165 targets. And we talked about middle of the field, man. Like, this is the type of guy Josh Allen needs. And he's basically like Cole Beasley, plays that role, right? And Beasley actually was a really good receiver as far as, drops go. He didn't drop many balls, but this guy's bigger. And and he has a catch radius over the middle. It's a different element that this offense hasn't had.
Yeah, you don't have to put, and this isn't a knock against Beasley, but if you're Josh Allen, you kind of got to put the ball on Cole Beasley. With Dalton Kincaid, like, you just need to get it within his frame because he's 6'4" and has that large catch radius. And Erik, you brought up the basketball point, which is something I really, really love. And he talked about it. That basketball background is what he credits for his ability to go up and pluck the football and like snatch it and bring it down and tuck it like a big man down low, going and grabbing a rebound off the glass. And you see him, he attacks the ball, he high points it, he brings it down. And that's regardless if he's running a slot fade or he's by the sideline or if he's in a high traffic area in the middle of the field. He goes up, he gets it, he has the frame to go up and get it and withstand contact or box out guys and be physical, combined with the technicality and smooth athleticism. It's a really intriguing player and skill set to add to this Buffalo Bills offense and to Ken Dorsey. Yeah,
and so keep in mind, guys, these plays that we're going to show you, some from 2021, some from 2022, we're going to keep drawing these comparisons because I want you guys to understand that, yes, philosophically, the offense is going to change a little bit because it's going to change. They're going to use more, multiple tight end sets. So that's the change, though. But as far as like what type of concepts that the Bills are going to have to run, they're going to run all the same stuff. It's just instead of maybe a shifty, snappy slot guy, it'll be a bigger, route running tight end like Dalton Kincaid and even, Dawson Knox. Obviously, I think he's also going to be running some of this stuff too. And so some of these plays that you're going to see here, the Bills already have in their playbook, much like this play. This is a 2-by-2 formation. This is slot option. And this is what Utah did a bunch. They would put him in the slot to the short side of the field. All right. And I'll tell you why here in a little bit, but watch this. It's just the same movement. He's just running an option route. He's reading this guy dropping out and this guy right here dropping out. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to pivot away from him. But just like Beasley used to do, rather than running this as an out route, he does that little pivot away from the hook to curl defender, because a lot of teams running these cover 2 type looks are trapping with their corner. So he just pivots away. And I love, this is why he is so good after the catch. Look how he rotates his body as he's looking the ball in. He's already preparing to transition into a runner. It's something that you and I always talk about, a wide receiver's ability to transition into a runner, and how quickly he does that, or even a running back for that matter, out of the backfield, really sets a tone for how well they are after the catch.
I think it's part of the reason why he's, in addition to his athleticism, it's part of the reason why he's able to generate yards after catch, and why, like I mentioned, out of those 77 qualifying slot receivers with 50 targets, he was 9th in broken tackles plus missed tackles forced per reception. He transitions so quickly and smoothly from receiver to ball carrier. You see it consistently, like his body position, like he's looking the ball in with his eyes and his hands while the rest of his body is positioning himself to get upfield. Like he's getting vertical already to go north and south while he's still looking in the ball. He's not taking his eyes off the ball. It's all one seamless, smooth transition from snap to read to settle to catch to ball carrier, all in almost the blink of an eye, how fluid he is when he does that. And, I love the piece that you mentioned with, what the 12 personnel means. Just because you're in 12 personnel doesn't mean you necessarily have to be running like 12 personnel formations. It doesn't mean you're going to have, both tight ends attached to the line of scrimmage or one in line and one hipped off. You can run your 11 personnel package out of quote unquote 12 personnel if Dalton Kincaid is your slot receiver, because Erik, he can function and live in this kind of world with quickness and efficiency mentally and physically.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. Here's another one, 2-by-2 set. This is the end of the game. I think it's 4th down and 10 here, 5:20 left in the game. They're down 14-3. So this is a money down. This is a gotta have it moment. And in that gotta have it moment from the near hash, they're going to Kincaid from the slot. And what is he doing? He's running that slot option. He's getting into the body of that defender. You see him create that separation at the top. And again, working back to the ball, being QB friendly. Look at his hands lead him back to the ball. His hands lead him back to the ball. He catches it, looks it in, and then he slips the tackle right here and gets the first down. These are the type of plays you got to have from your premier players, from your first round tight end in those big moments. 4th and 10, create that separation, work back to the ball, be QB friendly, first down.
Not only does he make the catch, but he catches it short of the sticks. And then, like you said, he has to work to get back upfield and get the first down. That takes tremendous faith in a quarterback to throw the ball short of the sticks, because you have faith that your guy is going to beat the one guy that's covering him. And again, this is where you see some of that strength mixed in with that athleticism. And part of that is because the guys he's going to get matched up against, because he's in the slot, he has the opportunity to get matched up against slot corners or safeties. Either way, players that probably aren't as big as him, or even if it's a more coverage-based linebacker, it's doubtful that coverage-based linebacker is going to be 246 pounds like Dalton Kincaid is. So you have that mismatch potential from a size and frame standpoint, but also from an athleticism in the open field standpoint, like you see there. Like it's hard to bring him down because he's got the size and the frame plus the athleticism. And then again, just even the knowledge and the awareness too, to get upfield enough. He knows where the sticks are. He grinds it out and he gets the first down. That's a really big play and a clutch moment for a game Utah needed.
Yeah, and this was obviously his best game as a pro. And when I watched it, I said, wow, this is one of the better games I've seen in a couple of years, especially if we're talking from a receiver option, tight end, wide receiver. Again, in the slot. And this is the thing. He's always, even when he's kind of in line, this is not even quite in line.
Yep.
Even when he's in line, they used him in a 2-point stance more times than not. And he just right here, this might be my favorite play from him, because as you can see, this is just sticks. That means most of these receivers are getting to the sticks. and turning and showing their numbers, and the quarterback's throwing it. So normally this is like, hey, just hook it up in between these two defenders right here. I want you to watch what he does, though. Again, sets himself up. Look at him already turning upfield. He's working upfield as he's catching the ball and transitioning into a runner. This is how he's able to split those two guys right there and get upfield for the first down. This might be my favorite play because this is understanding. This is that spatial awareness, right? Between those two defenders and how he is transitioning from a receiver catching the ball and into a runner. And just, it's so smooth, man. It's so smooth. And it's the type of stuff you can't teach this type of smoothness, man. It's just so much fun to watch. But again, one of those things you have to see it because he's that good. He just makes it look so easy.
That's the type of play in transition, like upfield, that you see in like drills that get you excited to be like, oh wow, this guy like looks fluid and good. Like, let's see if he can do it in a game. But here he is pulling it off in a big game, and he splits two big linebackers. Like, he breaks the tackle of two linebackers. He pinballs off of both of them, and it's because he transitions so quickly. Like, he beats them to the spot. Like, they're still kind of reading and reacting. Look at the angles they both take, especially 53. When he hits it, the top of his drop, he starts coming forward. And he starts coming forward on that angle, but he's already lost because Kincaid is already getting upfield. And then 44 doesn't have the speed or the quickness to chase him down. And you end up just getting two shoulder tackles. And because Kincaid has some good contact balance and some functional strength, he's able to bounce off both of those shoulder tackles. This is just, again, a really exciting piece because it showcases, again, the mental ability, his ability to kind of read what's going on, boom, settle. But then it shows that smooth, fluid athleticism combined with some physicality. I think, Erik, when you get a tight end that's known as like a receiving tight end, I think people associate with that with being like kind of softer or more finesse. And while he does have some finesse aspects to his game, he has more of a physical presence, I think, than he gets credit for, both as a blocker, even though he's not the best, and as a ball carrier and yards after catch guy.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And so we talk about 12 personnel and the different formational alignments and fun you can have with a guy like this. This is why it's so exciting. So now, instead of having in a 2x2, they have a 2x2, but both the tight ends are on the line of scrimmage. Kincaid is circled, the other tight end's right here. And so when you have two tight ends in the game and you're in these 2x2 sets with your tight ends in line, the defense has to bring up guys. They have to bring up guys. Why, Anthony? Because they have to cover every single gap. And so a lot of times when you're running these two tight end sets, you get a stacked box, but more importantly, you get these single high sets. And so I want you to watch what they do. Utah does here off of play action. So now they're going to send him vertical again, single high. Look here, and he's just going to run that little Dino post right here, just inside the safety there. Look at how quickly he gets vertically. Like it's so smooth, man.
Yeah.
And look at the post here, and then catch, right? Contested catch on a corner, mind you, on a corner. He catches this. Again, you can do so many things, not just with his alignment, but with formations. And when you have a guy with his type of skill set, as you see here from the end zone angle, it just can be really fun as a coordinator because look at him at the catch point, guys. It's just unreal. Like, go up and get it with a guy draped on him. He shrugs them off for the touchdown. Like, I can't wait to see him in the Bills offense. I just can't.
This is a quarterback friendly play from Kincaid, which you'll see with regularity. And again, this is where having a bigger bodied guy with some arm length and some size and a bigger frame, like, you can put that ball kind of off frame a little bit or off kilter, and he can go up and make a play. Erik, this one, though, my favorite piece in this is something I've been talking about all off season. I talked about it a bit last night on Disguise Coverage. Like, I just love what 12 personnel can be in these type of formations from a dictation piece. If the defense wants to stay in those two high alignments, cool. Guess what? Now we have the numbers advantage in the box, and we can probably churn out a good maybe 6 or 7 yards and take it easy. Or you want to come and bring down somebody into the box and you want to be in single high. Cool. Now maybe we'll go play action and suck in your second level defenders and take advantage with our athletic tight end who is too big to be matched with corners, but he's too fast and athletic to be matched by bigger linebackers or bigger safeties. You have this one-on-one individual mismatch potential in a vacuum, but you also have the dictation and mismatch potential formationally and from an alignment perspective. It's a really exciting piece, again, for the potential of what it could be. He opens up a lot of potential doors.
Yeah, and just think about it. They're in that 2x2 set, 12 personnel, at a blink of a hat, they could shift out into a 2x2 set like this, right? So
Easy.
you do, that's the stuff that the Patriots used to do so often to the Bills with Gronk and Hernandez. And just that type of versatility is fantastic. So you saw that they were in a condensed set, double tight set, single high, stacked box. Well, now they have a 2x2 set. They're in a 2 high look. But guess what? He's good enough to work down the seam. You're going to play cover 2. Well, guess what? I'm going to just beat this linebacker over the middle right here and catch the ball
Ridiculous.
down the field. Just unreal. But again, so smooth working down the seam and splitting the defense right down the middle of the field and this 2 high look. So again, 2 high, you're going to see some of those Y options. You're going to see some of those slot options, but you're also going to see a lot of these posts and corners, smash type concepts to work the middle of the field, work those honey holes. And when you have a guy that can go up and get the ball like this on a contested catch down the field, I mean, this is some unreal stuff. I mean, look at that catch.
Oh, that's the catch radius right there. Like, that's going up and getting it. This is where, if it's a smaller guy, you have to put it more on his body, or you have to hope that he has that ability to climb the ladder. This is, I don't want to overplay it too much, but this is kind of easy. Like, he just reaches up and plucks it.
Yeah.
Because he can. And again, this is where if you're going to see those 2 high looks from defenses, right? And you've got Stephon Diggs on the outside on one side, and you've got everyone's favorite wide receiver 2, Gabe Davis, on the other side.
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs has gravity. He's going to draw coverage. Gabe Davis, whether you like him or not, has proven in this league that he can win downfield. So if you're throwing those 2 high looks, right, are you going to take the chance that Diggs gets one-on-one on the outside, or Gabe Davis does? Or do you want to take those safeties and kind of play them outside the hashes a little bit? Okay, cool. Do you have a linebacker that can carry Dalton Kincaid vertically and with his athleticism and speed? Or is your athletic guy who can stay with Kincaid that nickel corner? Cool. That nickel corner is going to get mossed in the middle of the field. That was a big-bodied linebacker who Kincaid went up and took that away from and on the top of his head. Imagine what he's going to do to a typical nickel corner in the NFL.
Yeah, and you see it here. He works down the sideline, and I talk about him always aligning into the short side of the field. They can do that with him because of his catch radius, because of how well he tracks the ball, how well he catches the ball. Even when he's covered, he's open, and he, in many ways, extends the width of the field. So even though you have the ball on the right hash here, and again, you're in the short side of the field, he is able to extend the width of the field because he can not only play to the boundary with great boundary awareness, but he can go up and get it like he does here down the sideline. And so they used him like that in so many different ways. So you're going to see a lot of these, plays down the field where he's making these 50-50 balls when really they're 70-30 balls, and bringing them in and still getting his feet in along the sideline there. We talked about those, slot options and working him from the slot. Here he is. This is, again, single high look. So whether you want to play 2 or 1 high, he can get down the field. Single high look. Hey, here's a shot call. Run that slot fade. And they do here. And he's able to, again, reel it in down the field in a contested catch situation. He even gets a flag on this play.
Yeah.
It's crazy because you'll see from the end zone angle right here. Watch how the guy's really just driving him out of bounds. Like, he's just got nothing left in the tank, and he's still able to keep his eyes on the ball and reel it in for the catch there along the sideline.
I love a good slot fade. I love sideline work, like a good rail route, or a good wheel, or a good slot fade. Kincaid is so prolific at the slot fade, and I love the 70-30 ball you talked about. One of my favorite quotes from last season was T. Higgins from the Bengals talking about, when he's downfield, those 50-50 balls are 80-20 for him. And it's real. Like, he turns him into 80-20. Kincaid is that guy who gives you that person who's a ball winner downfield because of his catch radius and frame and athleticism. Like, here he is again, like, slot piece, gets vertical. There's some separation. Look how he goes up and he plucks it. This is the big thing I noticed. We showed it in the underneath routes when he caught it and transitioned to a ball carrier. Look how he plucks the ball and he tucks it. He takes it and tucks it immediately. He doesn't get lazy with the ball. He doesn't just leave it in his hands. Almost every time he catches the ball, he catches it and he tucks it. Erik, it's like we're back playing ball again and you're working on the jugs gun, and it's like catch and tuck, and you flip the ball back. He again credits his basketball background for that, that ability to go up, get the ball, rip it away, and tuck it underneath and protect it from other big bodies when you're banging down low in the paint. it's technical, it's athletic, it's smooth, it's fluid, it's got mismatch potential, and it is his skill set. Again, it's a really intriguing piece for so much of what we talked about. Erik, you mentioned it earlier, like to control the middle, what you needed from the slot. And we were thinking, man, if Jackson Smith and Jigba falls, or man, Josh Downs in the second, or what could Zay Flowers be, and Tank Dell, and all these pieces. And they went out and got this power slot, this guy that gives you a formational mismatch potential in addition to just one-on-one mismatch potential in a vacuum. It's really exciting. Like, and again, we're not just saying it, like when you watch the tape, and for Erik, guys like us that think of the X's and O's and the scheme, it's just fun to kind of play with this in our head and think, man, like, what could this be? Especially for a guy like Ken Dorsey, who you've shown in the last several days, his time in Carolina, the familiarity with the two tight end looks with Greg Olsen and Ed Dickson, even if you want to connect it back to his time as a player at the University of Miami with how much they use tight ends. Again, it was a bit of a different game of football back then, though that was more traditional, but maybe this potentially helps Ken Dorsey a little bit too. Oh, and it ties right into the slide.
Yeah, 2015. So the season that Ken Dorsey was the QB coach, Mike Shula, who's an assistant on the Bills staff right now under Ken Dorsey, Mike Shula was the OC, so now he's working under Dorsey. In 2015, when they made the Super Bowl, they were a 12 personnel team. So one running back, two tight ends on the field. And when they ran it the most, 437 plays in 2015. They scored 84 points in 12 personnel, over 2,600 yards. They were top 5 in EPA. They were 10th in pass EPA. They were 2nd in rush EPA. They were 8th in yards per play. I mean, they were just on top of the world when it came to 12 personnel. So again, at that time, Greg Olsen was a premier weapon. They were targeting him like 25% of the time. So, and he was a veteran, but again, a first round talent. All right. Ed Dickson was the second tight end in that offense. And he was, I think, in his 3rd or 4th year at the time. You can see the numbers by year. Off to the left side, the far left column is just their snap percentage. And then you'll see the Bill snap percentages, and then the 3rd and 4th columns from the right side there. You're going to see the slot percentages. So how often the Panthers use those guys in the slot during those years, and then how much the Bills have used their guys in the slot over the years. And so I do think that when it comes to Kincaid year one, I think he probably gets a good chunk of snap percentage. I'd say probably 40 to 50%. And most of that is probably from the slot, probably even higher than some of these guys. I imagine it probably be in like, let's see here. I'd probably go in with Dixon's number, 54.3% snap percentage. I expect that number 45 to 50% to be from the slot. So, these are interesting numbers to look at just to give you an idea. Like, hey, yes, the Bills haven't had the ability to run 12 personnel looks, but when the Panthers had those type of guys and their offensive identity was 12 personnel, those guys got a lot of work and a lot of targets.
Absolutely. And I understand, I brought a similar point like this up last night on Disguise coverage, and I understand the skepticism that fans do have regarding Ken Dorsey. And some of the comments that came through were like, well, yeah, if Ken Dorsey knows how to use them. And, last year he couldn't use them. So we'll see. Last year's tight end grouping, no disrespect, of Dawson Knox, Tommy Sweeney, and even Quentin Morris, Erik, who, both you and I like, that's not a tight end grouping where you're looking at your roster going, man, we need to go more 12 personnel because we need to get Tommy Sweeney and Quentin Morris on the field more. It's a different dynamic when you've got two tight ends who are functional in the pass game, but also as blockers versus the pass, or in the pass and in the run. And that's what you had at that time in Carolina. Like, Greg Olsen was one of the premier tight ends in the league, could almost do anything and everything. I still don't get why the Chicago Bears traded him. I thought that was so foolish.
I mean, the guy was playing 95% of the snaps. That's wild. That is wild. And getting 25% of the targets. It's crazy to think that. He was a stud. And the funny thing about, some of the negatives with Dalton Kincaid kind of tie into some of the coaching stuff, because some of the negatives are, his blocking, and mostly his blocking in line. It's inconsistent. I think he's got the willingness to block,
which is hugely important, right?
Huge.
Like that. Yeah. He's willing.
But blocking on the perimeter, screens, pitches, stuff like that, he's money. I'm not even worried about that, especially when you're talking, he's going to be going up against corners and safeties. But in line, there's some inconsistencies, and it's really having to do with his physicality. But the funny thing is, one, Greg Olsen had the same thing coming out. He was the same type of player who had to work on blocking. You know,
he was almost a pure pass catching tight end coming out of the University of Miami.
And you know who his coach was in Chicago initially?
I wonder. Tell us.
Rob Boris. Rob Boris helped develop Olsen into a well-balanced tight end. Same with Dawson Knox coming out. You know, he wasn't the best blocker, but now he's functional and more of a plus blocker, not just on the perimeter like Kincaid, but also in line. And so I can see this offense, you know, being more that power spread where Kincaid, again, maybe it's not year one, but he's going to be that slot role, that volume guy. And as we said, you know, when it comes to 12 personnel, when it comes to tight ends, the Bills can only go up. And that's a good thing. So that's a good thing. I don't want everyone to be like, okay, you know, have your worries about Dorsey. I get that. But Dorsey has experience with guys like guys like Olsen and tight ends like Dixon. So I'm not too worried about that. And think about this. This is how I'll end the segment. Last season, as you know, as bad as the slot was and how they had to go back and get Cole Beasley, the reason why Kincaid's important in the slot is because even last year, with all that going on, the Bills were still 5th in percentage of targets from the slot position. So they still want to be a slot-based offense, which they always were under Beasley. They just need a guy to carry that torch.
And Kincaid could be that guy. It's extremely exciting to see what he brings from a skill set piece. And just to round it out for me, you know, we talked about so much about the athleticism, the pass catching piece. I wanted to drill home again on the run blocking piece because, you know, his strength is as a pass catcher and his athleticism and the technicality and the fluidity. Yes. But just because his strength as a tight end is towards the pass catching side, that does not mean he's a poor or a minus run blocker, especially Erik. Like you said, you watch him on the tape. He can dig out safeties. He can crack on linebackers. He is money, like you said, against slot corners and outside corners. Is he the guy that you want lined up in line blocking Matt Judon right now? No, not necessarily. But you know what? If that does happen, he's going to try his ass off. He's not going to shy away from contact. One of the comps I saw during the draft weekend that I hated, people were like, oh, so he's like a better Mike Gesicki. No,
that's disrespectful.
Absolutely.
That's straight. Because that guy was allergic to blocking. That is straight disrespectful.
Yes, he cannot block and he does not want to block. Mike Gesicki, for all intents and purposes, all like tight end versus weapon versus slot receiver, all those jokes aside, Mike Gesicki is a slot receiver. He is not a tight end. He does not attempt to block. He does not want to. None of it. Kincaid is functional and he's willing. And that is, at this point, good enough considering how much of a plus matchup and pass catcher he is when you look at the tight end position. So all in all, a move that, you know, I think surprised a lot of us on draft night, but was really exciting to see, you know, especially when we started thinking about it and really diving into the tape. And Erik, that leads us a bit into our second man to break down tonight, the Bills' second round pick at pick 59, someone who I keep telling the story when you and I were watching one-on-ones in the Senior Bowl, and I kind of nudged you and just pointed and was like, look at his hands, because I can see the 4XL marking on his gloves. Just a physical mauler of a dude at the guard spot. O'Cyrus Torrence falls in the second round. Bills grabbed him. Brandon Beane talked about it, that he was just the highest guy on their board by far, and they made the pick. Interesting, you know, to see what his skill set and frame adds to the interior offensive line for the Bills, because it's not a like for like with what they already have, and his tape is really fun.
Yeah, and again, it plays to the point that they are tweaking their philosophy and maybe some of their archetypes, because this guy is not their typical archetype at guard. 6'5", 330, just a shade under 34-inch arm length. And to be honest, he's more of a phone booth guy than he is an athletic guy that can get out in the space. But he's very good at creating displacement with that size. And so very physical, very powerful. He's a people mover. Again, part of that evolution. But what he does have that Aaron Kromer will love are strong hands and good anchor ability. And he does a great job, as you'll see in some of these clips, of absorbing the momentum of the pass rush with his hands sometimes with his big body, and sometimes with his legs, with his base. He's able to hop or anchor down. That is one thing that Kromer has to have in his offensive linemen, regardless of how athletic or not athletic they are. Some of the negatives, I do think it's that athleticism, getting out in the
Yeah.
space. He's a little clunky. He can go ahead and kick guys out, but if you're asking him to turn and rotate his body on log blocks so that the running back can bounce, you're going to see some inconsistencies there. And then just some of his lateral speed. You know, we're at the Senior Bowl, and I thought he was going to kill me because I asked him some questions on the field about his play.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and so I asked him. And so rather than ask a guy what he sucks at or where he struggles at, I always phrase it differently. I say, hey, on a weekly basis, how were defenses attacking you? How were pass rushers attacking you? And that'll tell you really where the opponents think some of his weaknesses are. And he said, and it's something we saw in the drills and one-on-ones, laterally. Guys were attacking him with speed off his edges and making him change directions. And some of that we saw in the Senior Bowl and some of those one-on-one drills. But in the end, man, this guy, I had a late first-round grade on him. So to get him where they did, man, I was happy with it.
I didn't know if he would go first round, but I would have bet almost anything that he was going to go between pick 32 and 50 at the latest. Yeah. I thought by mid 40s he would definitely be gone. Seeing him there at 59, again from a value standpoint, I was shocked. The first piece in Erik, you touched on it, that sticks out for me right away. Like, he is more of a downhill presence and a people mover and a thumper at 330 pounds. And when you look at the rest of the Bills' interior offensive line right now, Connor McGovern, Mitch Morse, Ryan Bates, David Edwards, Ike Butker, the heaviest guy there is Bates and I think McGovern, both at 308 pounds. Torrence is at 330. And Bates and McGovern and Morse and Edwards, these are all guys who are athletic guys. You want to put them in space. You want to get them on the move. That's not necessarily what you want for O'Cyrus Torrence. To kind of piggyback on some of the areas of opportunity for him, want to phrase that nicely just in case he's listening and decides to choke me and squeeze my head. I think he's a bit inconsistent when connecting on the move, you know, especially as a puller or even climbing to the second level at times.
Yep.
Yes. You'll see that inconsistency connecting with defenders and guys can get by him a bit. Every concern for me is really tied to athleticism and movement-based things. Also, to your point, like power guys, I'm not concerned about, but quick speed rushers, guys who want to try and beat him with that speed or beat him and kind of create that soft edge and attack the shoulder or try and have a quick get off and get him to go upfield. Open up and then cut back and cross his face. I do wonder how he handles that at the NFL level where speed and quickness and get off and pass rush plan, all of that is dialed up and guys are going to attack him in that way 1000%. But what he does have going for him, my favorite thing as we dive into the tape, I love the hands, the strength, and I like his ability to refit his hands. You'll see him kind of get that inside clamp handed. He controls his ability to turn people with those vice grip paws that he has. And, you know, like we always joke with Aaron Cromer, hands. If you get him to really kind of connect more with his punch timing and location with that hand strength and that grip strength and the power behind it, it's a really exciting piece. And again, a cool dynamic given the physicality that he brings to the interior that the Bills currently don't have.
Yeah, and you talked about it. His grip strength is ridiculous. Just watch the left pad of this defender. Look, I mean, right here. Look how that pad gets elevated. How he gets under the guy. He lifts him up. He lifts him up, and then just takes him out of the frame. He's like, "You come this way. You come this way."
Let's go for a ride.
That ETN can get up the field. Like, he's a people mover, guys, and it's exciting to have a guy like that back in this offense. We haven't had that type of nastiness, that type of grit. That type of power since I'd say like Incognito. And so I'm excited to have this big dude on the offensive line. Like you said, he is a different element. And when we're talking about adding that physical presence, running more 12 personnel, tweaking that philosophy, running the ball a little more from some of these 2 tight end sets, this guy's going to help you move the ball and he's going to displace guys up the middle so that guys like running backs like James Cook can get up the middle for big yards.
That's what I'm excited about, that downhill presence. And the note and word that I kept writing over and over again in my evaluation was displacement. What we've seen more from the Bills has been, well, at least the last couple of years anyway, you know, we saw mid zone and outside zone with Cook, and we saw pin and pull and dart and things with Devin Singletary. Torrence gives you the opportunity to create that vertical displacement. Maybe they start to run in a little more inside zone, a little more duo, because you get him on.
Well, they will. There's no maybe. They are. They will. They're going to run.
I'm just thinking
that.
If he just for the perspective of just in case he doesn't beat out Ryan Bates, and Ryan Bates is the guy. But absolutely, like, this is a guy you want getting north and south. You want him to just widen that hole because he can win individually, or when he's working those deuce blocks or those ace blocks, he widens the hole and just creates absolute vertical displacement. I'm sorry, I got distracted by how much I laughed. Like, I know there's a bit of help here from the right tackle, but man, he just mauls this dude and turns him inside.
Yeah, it's something we always talk about. He gets the hand leverage here. That's a Cromer thing. Gets the hand leverage.
Hands.
And then his tackle is the driver, so he gets that sled moving, and then the torque. This is that torque that you see from offensive lineman. He just torques that guy, creates that rushing lane for the running back, and again, just moving people, whether it's vertically displacing or horizontally displacing a guy based on the rushing concept. Here's another one. This one's more vertical, right? So he gets that combination block, and just look at the angle he takes and how tight he is, hip to hip, knee to knee, and then watch him get under the guy, create that displacement. Here comes a running back off his butt. I mean, completely turns that guy around, creates a wall on that vertical displacement, on that combination block. Again, these are the type of plays that the Bills are going to be able to run now with just get downhill. They're not going to have to always go, hey, we're going to do mid-zone, attack the tight end, then cut it back. No. We're coming right downhill, right down Broadway.
I love it. Those at you runs, those physical, like, no, we're going to run down your throat and see what you can do. Also, shout out to Florida using some pre-snap motion on this one that makes that number 8 linebacker widen out a little bit. That opens up this whole little bit. Good play design. He moves a little bit, and they're trying to climb to the second level on this double team, but that linebacker takes himself right out of the play. And then you just see Torrence completely control his man and turn. Like, this is where you want him. You want him just latching on initially. And once he gets those paws on guys, he's going to turn, he's going to drive. He can create that horizontal or vertical displacement with his strength and his frame. And also for as wide of a guy he is and as big of a guy he is, again, at 330 pounds, he's not fat. Like, he is a solid dude. This isn't like some dude who's out of shape. Like, he's big, but he is solid. Like, he is a legitimate physical presence that can dominate on the interior.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. So here, now we're going to get into some of those pass rush reps. So obviously he's a people mover. You've seen it. He's wiped guys right out of the frame. But this is my favorite part of this game, his ability to anchor. So this is against Georgia. I want you to watch how firm he is. And this is when he's closer to the line of scrimmage. Look at him sit right there like that. And then just, you're not moving anymore. You're not going anywhere. I have you locked down. Your pass rush plan is eliminated. You're eliminated, and the ball's out.
Yeah, this is also one for me with a little bit of some hand refitting. You watch his right hand gets into the face, and then watch as he steps back and he anchors. He gets it underneath, and he gets it right into the chest. And then look at boom. Then you got the left hand underneath the shoulder pad, and we also saw you got the widening of the feet to give him that balance, almost that duck feet kind of posture. There's nowhere to go. He has completely stolen the momentum from that defensive tackle, and he did it with his ability to anchor and his hand strength and his hand
that
refitting.
Double under, right? That's called a double under. There are different ways to anchor. This is that double under. It's a great point by Anthony, how he refits a hand, gets his hands inside, gets those elbows tight, and again, then locks down from the base, right? From the legs up, he's able to lock that down.
There's nowhere to go. Like, once you lock that in with the strength and power that he has, there's nowhere to go if you're a defensive tackle. And that's what happened on that play. Like, that's good technique, and it's good technique tied into his strength.
Yeah, and here's another one, and I love this because they're running a game. So there's obviously some crazy stuff going on with the way they've aligned everyone here. So there's some type of game or stunt coming, right? And they understand that. There's basically no one over the middle. So they let it unfold, and you see how calm they are. This is the 3-man slide right here, the half man, and you see him help out right there with the right tackle, and then here comes this rusher right here. I want you to watch how easily he locks him down. He's a brick wall. The guy's coming full speed from depth, and he barely even affects him. Like, that is ridiculous power. And again, ability to absorb momentum and power with the body right there, and using his base. He just does it so freaking well.
This play encapsulates two things I really like. One, I think he's very heady and aware for stunts in games. You will consistently see him scanning that proverbial head on a swivel. He's always, especially if he's unmanned or unoccupied, he's looking to see who's coming, what's happening, and he's trying to pick up wherever he needs to. And then, yeah, like his ability to handle those second level blitzers, I love the verbiage that you use. Like he absorbs those blitzers. Some other words I like to use depending on the game, he'll crumple those second level blitzers, or like guys will almost melt when they go into his body. Like, cause he is a brick wall. Like he absorbs your momentum and power and almost like transfers it onto himself, and he just stalemates you and you got nowhere to go.
Yeah, and here's when he's playing a little game with this pass rusher. The pass rusher's lined up on his inside shoulder, and Torrence thinks he's gonna immediately, shoot inside here. But look at Torrence shoot that left hand, and then again nose to nose, and then watch him hop, and then just lock it down. Like that pass rush is over. So all these power move pass rushers, they're gonna have troubles, kind of pushing that pocket into the face, into the lap of Josh Allen. And it's really something that Bean and this staff have really kind of put all their eggs in the basket when it came to this offseason and getting offensive linemen. Not just the numbers and the quantity, but quality guys that can set a firm pocket. That was something we talked about with Connor McGovern, setting a firm pocket so that Josh Allen can feel comfortable in the pocket and get the pass off.
That was literally in my next notes here, that if he's the starting right guard, you have two guards in him and Connor McGovern, if they're both the starters, that have the ability to anchor, and they control the depth of the pocket, which allows Josh Allen to feel comfortable. It allows him to step up, especially if you have this type of stability up front. Even if, and I'm not trying to pick at him, even if Spencer Brown gets beat around the edge here, right? Because his partner in O'Cyrus Torrence there is holding up on the interior. Let's pretend, that's Spencer Brown. He gets beat around the arc. Josh Allen sees it, feels it. You have the ability to step up because your right guard has stalemated and controlled his man. Now, Josh Allen can step up because the integrity of the depth of the pocket is there. He can step up, he can survey, keep his eyes downfield. Maybe he escapes, vertically and, up in between that gap, or maybe he escapes out the front door and gets to the sideline. It creates so many more opportunities when you have that stability in the interior of the pocket. That's, for as much as edge rushers are talked about, the most disruptive force to any pass play is quick interior pass rush. And O'Cyrus Torrence is a move towards mitigating that from opponents.
Right. And so here's another one where he refits, he fits his hands and he anchors with his hands. I mean, just look as that pass rusher, he's in a 2-point stance. So he's in a sprinter stance. He's coming full speed as he hits Torrence right here. Look how the hands and the hips of that defender, that pass rusher, and his pads elevate. That's the power in his hands. Like he immediately lifts that dude up and takes away all that power that guy generated as a pass rusher, and then just, again, locks him down. Quarterback has a nice pocket. It's a firm pocket. He's able to get rid of the ball to get the ball down the field. Just awesome stuff from this guy when you're talking anchoring down.
Yeah, you're always trying to see the body lean of defenders to try and see like where their leverage or their power is. And that backer, he's got that forward lean. He's on that angle. And as soon as he makes contact with Torrence and Torrence gets his hands inside and gets, again, those vice grip paws on him and into his chest. First of all, it's good hand placement inside and good control. And then the strength, like you said, he lifts him upwards. And when you're being lifted upward and kind of wrenched back or wrenched straight up into the sky, your momentum is gone, your power is gone, your drive is gone. O'Cyrus Torrence took that away from the defender. And once that happens, you almost have nowhere to go. And that's a very welcome sight for Josh Allen and for a Bills offense that last year saw some pressure in the interior at times. And again, it's much harder to evade and keep your eyes downfield and still keep things going from a fluidity standpoint when you get that pressure on the interior. And Erik, again, in a vacuum, O'Cyrus Torrence, his tape is really fun. I have to really work on not calling him O'Torrence. I did it a bunch last night. I've done it in my head. And it's also exciting with his skill set, the dynamic it adds to this offense. A little more physicality, a little more downhill run, potentially some more pocket integrity from the depth of the pocket standpoint. This could really be a move that pays dividends based on how the board fell for the Bills.
Yeah, and I do think that, they're going to compete among, him and Bates are going to compete for the right guard position. I just don't know how he doesn't play. I don't know how he doesn't play right away. They'll compete, but there's something it's a conversation I had with Eric Wood when I was still at the Athletic. Guys with versatility, that versatility hurts them when it comes to starting. And so offensive staffs will look at a guy like Bates and they'll say, man, he could play every position. Why am I just using him at guard? So I think that versatility may hurt him. And in the end, the Bills invested a high pick on Torrence. I think they wanted to play. I think all of these offensive linemen that were brought in are Cromer guys. And that to me is something, because I think Beane's leaning on Cromer when it comes to evaluating offensive line, which is a smart thing to do based on the history that Beane has had. So with that said, I think he does eventually start. Maybe it's not right away. Maybe it's a few games in. I think he does eventually start. And what's scary about this when we're talking, more 12 personnel, being more physical, committing to the run a little more. Last season, if we're talking just running backs, the Bills were number 1 in yards before contact per rush. They were number 1. People don't realize that. They could run the ball. It just, they didn't stay committed to it. So think about what they can do now with Torrence. The defense, they don't care if the defense knows that they're going to run the ball. No. As we said, they're going to come right down Broadway. We have the guys up the middle that can move the line of scrimmage now. They just got to stay committed to it.
What gets me really excited, Eric, we've talked about it for 2 seasons in a row now. And Mitch Morse talked about it last year when he came in the film room with us, that ability to punish defenses when they give you light boxes. When you add a mauler and a grinder and a people mover like O'Cyrus Torrence, you imagine what happens when you've got a 6-man box or a 7-man box. He can almost eat 2 guys by himself. And it's going to be interesting to see, Eric, like we talked about, how he adjusts at the NFL level from an athleticism standpoint, potentially a foot speed standpoint. Can he handle those quick rushers, the speed rushers, the quick get off, those guys who want to try and get upfield, get him to open up? But he's got some, really fun, strong traits to lean into that can, help mitigate some of his, vulnerabilities in those athleticism areas. Really exciting potential. And I love the piece on Bates. Like, to put in everyone's mind too, if Torrence beats out Bates has tremendous value in the fact that he can play both guard spots, the center spot. And honestly, it's not ideal. In a pinch, he could pop out to a tackle. Like, he doesn't have the size of the arm length. Yeah, he's done it. Like, you've got a utility man who can play legitimately 3 spots, almost maybe 4 and 5. That's a very, very, very valuable piece. So don't write off Ryan Bates if he gets beat out. He's got a lot of value, especially for a position like offensive line where, knock on wood, usually your starting 5 don't stay your starting 5 the entire year. You need that depth. You need that versatility. Very exciting for O'Cyrus Torrence. Very similar to the excitement we have for Dalton Kincaid. And now we move on to the hands down unanimous favorite pick of every Bills fan in the 2023 draft.
Man.
2 years in a row, 3rd round picks. I was on the live show. I forgot who else I said, but Judge asked me, he was like, who would you not, it was at like pick 89. And they were like, who would you not want to see at 91? And I was like, I forget the first person. I was like, I wouldn't want to see so-and-so. And I don't think I'd want to see Dorian Willams right now, just because of back-to-back years and yada, yada. Lo and behold, you get Dorian Willams. He's got some fun traits. He's got some fun skill set pieces. I think you and I both, and I know I don't want to speak for you, but I think, saw him with the opportunity of being like a developmental Mike from a long-term perspective. But Eric, what really kind of muddied the waters was kind of the back and forth we saw and heard from Brandon Beane, over these past several days in terms of talking about what he was going to be, and then coming from a simple offense or a simple defense versus a complex defense now with the Bills. And then Sean McDermott said he could do both. And then Brandon Beane said some stuff about Tremaine Edmonds on Chris Long's podcast and talked up Willams. I think that Beane conversation has kind of muddied the waters. And it's been odd in terms of setting the expectations for what people think Dorian Willams can be in 2023 and beyond. But luckily for them, Eric, we've got some film to break down who he is in addition to our evaluations.
Yeah, before they drafted him, I thought there are 2 guys, if we're talking developmental Mike. So guys that won't be ready year 1, but year 2, they're ready to compete. Willams was one of them. The guy that went right before him to the Cowboys, and Overshawn, the guy we saw at the Senior Bowl. He had a different skill set as well. And again, he just needed some development. Those are the 2 dark horses I had that could convert to Mike. And so, I didn't have an issue with the pick, initially. Initially, I didn't. But then Brandon Beane opens his presser and says, no, we're going to start him outside linebacker. I'm like, say what? Now I have an issue with it. So then it became a head scratcher. And then, as you said, from there on out, there's been all these different narratives thrown out there with Beane and McDermott. But let's look at the player. All right, we'll talk about the player. He's been very productive. Over 2,000 snaps. Last year he had 44. Or overall, he's had 44 total pressures, 6 sacks, 217 solo tackles, and 128 stops. So he's very productive when he's on the field as a linebacker. And he most of the time he was a weak side linebacker, but there were some fits where he was a stack linebacker in the A gap. But my thing when they drafted him was like, okay, he's going to be a special teams player, right? He's going to take the place of Terrell Bernard or Tyrell Dotson, who were prime special teams guys. They played a ton of snaps on special teams. So my thought was, okay, he's going to take the place of one of those guys because those other two are competing for the Mike linebacker position. Right. So that made sense to me in that regard. But it just, ever since then, it's just, everything's murky now. And you know what? As far as size goes, he's fine. Actually, arm length wise, he's good. And if we're talking stack linebacker and those light boxes, he's got that. For me, it was always from the shoulders up. You know, a lot of times you hear us analysts talk about a guy as a run and chase guy, you know, run and chase, see ball, get ball. That's a positive, but in many ways, it's also telling you that that guy is not the best. He doesn't have the best processor. And I think that's where you see some of that area of opportunity, you know, him digesting and dissecting plays and key and diagnosing plays half a tick slow. And so he'll get caught up in traffic, or he'll get caught by an offensive lineman, get caught off guard. And so I think that's overall, he's got the measurables. He's got the ability to play it very good in zone, especially. And we're going to see some of those plays. It just, ever since Bean and McDermott started opening their mouth, things just gotten weird.
Yeah, we were talking about it offline, and it just seemed that Bean's first statements talking about, you know, Tulane was more of a simpler defense. This is going to be complex. You know, we like our guys to, you know, be multiple and be able to wear, you know, play in both spots, but I don't necessarily see him as a dual guy in 2023. And
this is a great question, Ant. Who's more instinctive, Bernard or Williams? I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like Bernard hit from the shoulders up, that boy processes.
Yeah.
Like that's where he's gonna have to be that guy, because he doesn't have this, you know, some of the size and especially the length. The arm length is just ridiculously low. Ridiculously low for a Mike linebacker.
Especially in comparison to Dorian Willams, who
it's like a 2-inch difference.
Yeah,
it's like 30. He's under 31, right, for Bernard?
Yeah, and Dorian Willams is at 33 and 3/4 arm inch length. He's got like good lineman arm length, like for some guys in college. And yeah, Bernard has it from the head up. If you could morph these guys and like put Bernard's head into Dorian Williams' body, would be really exciting. But yeah, Bernard's got it from the head up. And again, it also, I think, makes sense knowing the coaching tree he comes from with, you know, working and playing for Dave Aranda, who's, you know, one of the best D coordinators in terms of getting guys ready from a match coverage standpoint. And what's interesting with Dorian Willams, I think initially when you look at him, I think it makes sense given some of the things that Bean said as well. A lot of the coverages you see, it's not going to be the coverage we see on this first play, but a lot of the coverages you see from him, it's kind of your basic spot drop zone. He's just dropping into the hook curls or the flats. And we know, or, you know, from what we've seen from the Bills, especially Tremaine Edmonds, you see more match coverage. You see carrying tight ends and slot receivers vertically. You didn't see that a ton from Dorian Willams at Tulane. And so that was a bit of a concern for me, in addition to Eric, you know, the processing pieces, also some of his, you know, his block shedding and or slipping blocks. I'd like him to be better there. Part of me thinks it's tied to his processing. But especially for a guy who has that arm length and who has explosion and burst, I'd like to see him not even stack and shed, but just slip blocks a little more. Do the old, you know, maybe this is unfair to say, but do a little more of that Fred Warner where you just dip under a guy and slip. You don't have to bang him and, you know, stack and shed. So there are areas of improvement for him on this developmental path, but there are some pieces to like. Eric, this first one we grabbed here is one of the 2 or 3 coverage reps in this game against Memphis where you see him carry an offensive player vertically. And this was really exciting to see because, again, a lot of it is him just dropping in a back pedal, eyes on the QB, trying to feel what's going on, you know, not necessarily reading the route distribution, but more spot drop. Here, you see some similarities to what you would see in the pros. He turns, he IDs that vertical man, matches him, carries him vertically, and this is where you see the speed, the range, the athleticism. I'd like him to get his head turned around a little bit earlier. He might actually pick this ball off. He actually still comes close to picking this ball off You see him kind of clap at it because he knows what's up, that he dropped it. And you'll see it from this angle. His head turn is just a little late and the ball falls right in his hands, but he didn't know it was coming. This is a nice one, though. He IDs it, and this is where you see the speed, the range, and the ability to kind of carry someone vertically, which is a plus aspect of his game.
Yeah, this is a very good rep, and it's one of the. I will say, I think it's one of the. It's a rare rep, right?
Absolutely.
It's not something they asked him to do a lot. This is a nice creeper pressure. It looks like some sort of cover 3 creeper pressure where he has to carry. So this is probably one of the more complex, to be honest, one of the more complex coverages they played here. Did a great job there, getting down the field and getting that depth, carrying that guy down the middle of the field. Here's another one from the same game, right, Ant?
Yep, absolutely. Again, the same game against Memphis. This is showing his ability as a rusher. He's got some juice when he blitzes or when he comes off the edge, not from a move standpoint or a pass rush plan standpoint, but from the perspective of he's got athleticism, he's got that short area burst. This time you're going to see him just come downhill, running back tries to pick him up, and this is where you see some of that strength and that burst and athleticism and agility too, as he quickly just sidesteps and also like slides through the inside shoulder of that running back. And that's where you see him. He gets held up a little bit, and then watch him as he gears up again and bears down on the quarterback quickly. That's where you see that nice quickness in that short area, as he's able to go from kind of a slower or stalled out pace and ratchets it up to full speed right away to heat up the QB.
Yeah, I do like his closing speed. That's the thing with him. He's not very twitchy in the short area, but once he gets going, if he's going obviously north or south like this, once he gets going, he gets some good speed. When he's scraping down the line of scrimmage, you see him build up that speed in the very much the same way. I do like that, and I also like him at the tackle point, which we'll talk about later. But he's pretty good. I was surprised at rushing the quarterback. He times his rushes really well. And there were times at Tulane where they would, put him as an edge player, as a pass rusher in a 2-point stance to rush the quarterback.
Which is also something, we talked about a little bit, and he's not the same player as Drew Sanders, but something we talked about if the Bills were to bring in someone like Drew Sanders, somebody who you can use as like a sub-package rusher. Now, Drew Sanders has moves and plan and is ahead of Dorian Willams in that regard. But nonetheless, he's somebody that got work in a sub-package role. You saw it a bunch in this game. In the fourth quarter, they put him at edge and were running stunts and games with him all day. This one is him timing up the snap count of the quarterback, chasing him down in the backfield, getting a tackle for loss. This is where you see some nice anticipation. He just, granted, Memphis kind of telegraphs it a little bit with this snap count and what's happening. But this is where Erik, like you see, when he starts to build up that momentum and once he gets going, it's a problem because of how fast he is. He runs a 4.49 40, and he bears down on this quarterback quickly as he shoots the gap and just gets right into the backfield.
Yeah, I like that. It looked like it was supposed to be a shovel pass as well, a power shovel, and he just blew it up with the angle he took there. And this is I love this play from the end zone angle. It kind of plays into what I was talking about, right? That build up speed, working down the line of scrimmage. This is more of an odd front here. You can see the zero tech nose tackle right there. And this is going to be a thing this year, regardless if it's him, Bernard, Dotson, whoever's playing in the middle with Milano. Got to keep him clean, and he's kept clean here, and that allows him to build that speed up and work down the line of scrimmage to bring down the running back.
I tweeted this play several days ago, and I tweeted the analysis of the play, and then I commented to my own tweet putting, it's amazing what can happen when you keep your linebackers clean,
right.
Cough, cough. So that's where it starts. The defensive line keeps him clean. What I like from this one, you see the range and you see the athleticism, but watch on the snap how this left guard is trying to pick him up. He beats him to the spot, stays clean and clear of that left guard 65, and then the right tackle comes off his double team. He tries to pick him up. He avoids him as well, scrapes right down the line, and then this is something he does a lot at the tackle point. He brings his whole body. He often leaves his feet like he's trying to meet chest on hip, chest on knee. He's bringing every single ounce of him through the tackle point. Sometimes it'll lead to some missed tackles, but he makes a solid impact because he brings his whole body with him on contact. And this last one, Erik, is an example of him rushing, this time from more of an off-ball alignment as he starts to creep towards the line on the snap. What's nice about this one, I like the way he flattens and gets to the quarterback. You see some of the core strength. You see some ankle flexion. This guard gets his mitts on him, grabs the jersey. Look at the lean and the torque that Dorian Willams has going on. Like, he's not in a proper position from a center of gravity standpoint, but he's able to flatten and go through those hands and go through that guard. And he doesn't get rounded. He doesn't get pushed upfield. He's able to flatten, bear right down on the QB, hit him up, and get a good hit on him. Unfortunately, it gets completed downfield. Yeah. But this is some nice core strength, ankle flexion, athleticism, burst, the ability to kind of, again, flatten as he gets around the guard a little bit there. That takes several skill set pieces to execute.
Yeah, I like that. And you can see it, where that development can still happen in that lower body. He's very top heavy, and you can see it from that end zone angle. I got one more play, a couple more plays real quick that I wanted to show that kind of play to that point. I'm see if I have them or not. Maybe I didn't.
I love that coverage wrap. Again, just to drill home for everybody as you start to bring up the next clip. It was encouraging to see that coverage rep for him because, like Erik mentioned, and like I mentioned in the intro a little bit for Dorian Willams, majority of coverages you see for him are just your basic spot drop zones, coverages that you're not really going to see a lot regularly in the NFL, or at least from the Bills. You need to see more of that match potential and match ability. So seeing him do it, albeit in a very, very, very limited and small sample size, it gives you some encouragement for what he could be at the next level in terms of, what they can build upon.
And here's one that gives you a little encouragement in the, pass coverage sense. So he's right here processing, run the pass here. And I just want you to watch how he stays in the lane. You see him point out to his teammate, hey, the run is possibly going that way. Well, now they're going into a pass drop. Now look at him split back here onto the hash to take away this deep over. Does a good job staying in that passing lane. Quarterback's looking right down the pike there and has to pull it down. You'll see it better from the end zone angle. Does a great job of getting in that passing lane from, processing, run to pass. Just a good job here. He's very good when we're talking, again, dropping to zone spots and landmarks. But this one, he just naturally felt the guy going behind him. Again, more of a rarity, but a nice play there. But I want to show you a play that, man, I don't think I uploaded it. You're right. The thing that stands out with him when his tackling is he does bring it, right? He does bring his hips and his body into that tackle. He unfurls those hips into the quarterback, into the running backs, and you see them snap back a bunch. But we do got to move on to the next guy. So next guy up, man, Justin Shorter, right? Justin Shorter, wide receiver from the Gators. The Bills like Gators this offseason, right?
A little bit. And you know what would have been really cool if there was like a member of the Cover One team who like kind of spoke about Justin Shorter before the draft as maybe being like some kind of target, because of his skill set or because of his frame. That would have been like a really cool thing. Or if that same person just had like a bunch of film cut-ups ready and raring to go just in case the Bills drafted him. Wouldn't that be like a really awesome thing to have, Erik?
Yeah, no, you're setting me up very nicely. And, obviously Shorter's a guy, I think we might have mentioned him as a draft target. But he's a guy,
you did.
6'4", 235 pounds, 4.55, 40-yard dash. I think he has a ceiling to be an X. So a guy that can line up on the line of scrimmage solo by himself. He's got the size. He's got to improve in that release package to be a true X. But as you see in some of these clips here, and most of the clips, he's a big guy, but he can get vertical. He's got that build-up speed that we were just talking about. He's very Gabe Davis-like when it talked about the long stride, but ability to stretch the field, kind of get on guys' toes when guys aren't really expecting it. I do like him in that Gabe Davis type role that he can lift coverages. I do think this is that sort of insurance type guy if Gabe isn't brought back, but tremendous ball tracking down the field. I know that's one of your favorite plays versus LSU, but he adjusts to inaccurate passes, over an 82-inch wingspan, damn near 34-inch arms, a 5.5% drop rate, so 6 drops on 177 targets. He's got a little bit of everything. He does need to improve in that short to intermediate area, running those in and out breaking routes, those 90-degree cuts, but he's got good potential for talking wide receivers in the middle rounds.
Absolutely. And if you're going to take a stab at somebody, take it on a tradesy, toolsy guy, 6'4", 229 pounds, the size, the frame, the arm length. And then you pair that with the 4.55 speed where, I think someone might see and be like, 4.55, that's not very fast. It is when you're 6'4" and you have very long legs. Like you hit it, you watch him get on top of defenders and corners quickly because he's got the speed mixed with those long legs. I'm interested to see what he can become from a route running standpoint in terms of like any sharpness or suddenness or technicality that he can add, because I do think those longer legs might be somewhat of a hindrance, but I like the X ceiling that you tabbed. You talked about him last week in our film room episode as being one of your day 3 targets, which he ended up being for the Bills. And also, in this class, there weren't, that one's real pretty. I love that throw and catch. There's not a lot of guys with this size and frame in this draft. Like, that's the reason, granted I liked him, but that's the reason Jonathan Mingo went a bit early, and why Cedric Tillman was being talked about a bunch, and why some people like A.T. Perry. There wasn't a lot of guys in this draft class who had size or length or a bigger bodied frame. Justin Shorter was kind of one of those under the radar guys. Didn't have, the most production necessarily this past year in the Florida offense, but you take a guy with the traits and the tools and you bring him into an organization that has Stephon Diggs and that has a good, albeit new wide receivers coach with a proven track record. This is the one I really
from
love.
The end zone angle is disgusting.
So beautiful. Like I first grabbed it months ago because Anthony Richardson, but then the ball tracking is nice too. Like, watch him adjust his path, eyes on the ball the entire way. Number 24 gets his hand on him, like he's interfering with him, not necessarily pass interference, but interfering with his ability to track the ball and catch it. And there's no hesitation in the poise and calmness for Shorter. His eyes are on the ball the whole way. He adjusts to it like a
late hands too. This is ridiculous. Look at his lean.
Beautiful.
He's leaning back, for God's sakes. I don't even know how he keeps his balance, let alone keep his eyes on the ball and show his hands that late and still reel it in with a guy draped on him. That's disgusting.
So impressive. It's legitimately like a center fielder who's going back to the warning track on a ball that got drived like deep. And
no doubt.
We're not just saying that. Like, this one was the one that initially caught my eye. Also with one of the ones you showed earlier in that clip package against Tennessee, where he's at the bottom of the screen into the boundary, and he runs like a 9-yard hitch, but the defender's all over him, and he just shakes the hell out of him at the top of the route physically and just chucks him, and then gets back, gets the ball, runs through him, and takes a couple defenders with him. What's also nice,
he's physical at the top, right? Like, that's the thing with him. Like, when he runs those hitches, those comebacks, those curls, he uses that size and uses that length. We see Diggs do it all the time at the top of those stop routes, is create that separation. He does it. He just got to be careful because he's a little stronger. He's a little bigger. I think Greg was the one that mentioned he went and found a picture of the dude with his shirt off. I mean, it's very DK Metcalf-like, right? Absolutely.
He's big. He's cut. He's a physically impressive dude when you look at him in that pick. And then again, when you see him on tape, you see the traits and you see the tools that he has. And also, Eric, it's a fun dynamic to add to the wide receiver room. You've got Stephon Diggs, who's a true one, but he's not the biggest dude from a size and frame perspective. You've got Gabe Davis, and then everybody else, it's, Deontay Hardy, and Sherfield's one of their bigger guys, but he's not necessarily a big frame guy. And then you've got Khalil Shakir, and he adds that X receiver upside potential in that frame, that combination of size, frame, height, length, speed. Really intriguing dude if they can polish him up a little bit. Brandon Beane also talked about him being like a four-phase special teams guy. He's got a really good chance to earn a jersey this year, as they like to say, and then we'll see what he can become in the long run. But he's got some fun tools to work with.
Yeah, physical field stretcher, 19.9 yards per reception, 2022. Good special teams guy, especially on the coverage units. He does a lot of work on his coverage units, punt and kickoff units. But with that said, man, we got to keep the show moving. 9 o'clock is coming quickly. Stay tuned for Greg, Aaron, and Joe Marino doing their recap on the draft as well. So we got your film covered. They're going to have a guest on the show to talk about his thoughts, having studied all these guys as well. So stay tuned for that after our show. We're going to move on to the guard, who I think is going to play guard, Nick Broeker, 7th round pick. It's interesting when you look at his bio on the website for Ole Miss. He's a Kent Hull Trophy winner, which is the best offensive lineman in Mississippi football, voted on by former coaches, players, and scouts. Obviously, you guys know who Kent Hull is. And this was an award that has been won by guys like Charles Cross from Mississippi State, Gabe Jackson, Laramie Tunzel, Elton Jenkins. So some really good offensive linemen. This guy is 6'4", 305 pounds, 32.5-inch arm length, played in 48 games. First few years, he was a left tackle, and then he became a left guard, which I think, given his measurables, his length and size, I do think that's where he ends up.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's even a couple games in the 2022 season where they've got some injuries at tackle and he pops out the left tackle and you just see, some athleticism pieces as well, but it's really that size and arm length. Like he's limited even at the college level. So it's going to be even more limiting for him at the NFL level. And then so you take the frame and the physical measurables and you want to kick him into guard already. And then you see the intelligence and the functional ability and technique that he performs with on the interior. And this was a good value, I thought, in the 7th round. I'm never going to complain at drafting somebody for the trenches ever. Like you can always restock that pipeline. But you got a guy who is good between the ears and good from a technique standpoint. Granted, there seems to be a bit of a log jam now at guard, but watching the tape, I was more impressed with him than I thought I was going to be.
I agree, man. He was fun. As you said, you see the intelligence, you see the processing, whether it's a run or a pass. We're going to show you some of that too. But again, I come back to a firm pocket and anchoring and why this guy is also a Cromer guy. He's very good he understands his body positioning and opportunities when those opportunities arise to widen a running lane or a passing lane or to, again, just get right down the cylinder. We always talk about pass blocking and using that offensive lineman staying in between the pass rusher and the quarterback. And he's very good at, drawing that cylinder right down the middle of the guy and staying down that middle line. And if he doesn't initially, he gets to it late, as we'll show you again. His processing is really good, man. I was very surprised by it. His intelligence and his processing. And so let's get into some of this film because it's actually very, very fun. So again, left guard. So he's number 64 right here. And you're going to see on this one, this is that recognition, that processing. You see 40 coming inside, but initially Broeker is looking out to Drew Sanders right there. So watch him. You can see him go through his process. He's stepping inside and he sees 40 coming to him. He's like, all right, I need to take him. Obviously, Sanders is moving on to someone else. He takes him and turns him just enough so that the running back can hit that lane. That's very good processing. Again, in the blink of an eye as the ball is snapped.
Yeah, you see him regularly execute his responsibilities, adjust on the fly. Again, like, and it's not to say this because he's not the most, physically imposing or impressive guy. He's good between the years. Like, you don't start for 3 years and be able to move positions in your final year if you don't have some sort of high functional football IQ, and he does. And you see the mental adjustment on this rep, and then you see the hand fit. He gets it inside on 40 there, drives him, turns him, occupies him. You see that, regular technicality from him and his ability to execute, with a combination of technique and leverage. Again, he's not the biggest, not the strongest guy, not the most powerful, but he can turn and move guys because he plays with leverage and understands how to pair it with his technique.
And here's one of those processing plays post snap where, again, he's kicking out, looking at 40. That guy's running away. So he pinches inside. He has power step. That's what he's really good at. Power steps, stays square. And this is his guy now. What's he do? He, again, escorts him out of the club. And now the quarterback has a pocket. He does leave that pocket. But again, processing pre to post snap, who the threat is, and then just locking onto that threat and riding him wide.
Yeah, it's a good adjustment. And not necessarily the easiest one. It's definitely not as easy as Broeker makes it look on this one. Like, you've got a dude coming from the second level, beelining it for that quarterback and coming down the barrel in a hurry. You've got to adjust. And I like how he gets that inside hand. He gets it right into the chest. And then he takes that left hand, gets it right up into kind of like the armpit area. So it's a good hand placement technique. And like you said, he just rides him and escorts him out the play. Yeah. And like, this is, again, for somebody who I knew wasn't the most athletic, to have the foot speed and the athleticism to connect, and then consistent pitter patter in those feet. Like, once he makes contact, he just keeps driving. There's no stalling. There's no momentum change. Just rides him right out.
Yeah. Here's one versus LSU. Firm pocket, right? So this nose tackle is slanting outside into the B gap there, and watch him again latch on, and then the body positioning. Watch how he gets his feet and his body in between himself right there. That's over. Ball's getting out. That type of body positioning. I had to look up if this guy was a wrestler. Like, that's how good he is with his body positioning. I couldn't find anything, but it just looked like a guy that understands his body and that spatial awareness and what it takes to, again, keep the pass rusher away from the spot of the quarterback in the pocket.
That subtle little turn that you hinted at, like at the end there, just that little ability to be like, you know what? Guy maybe is getting inside a little bit, bang, right there. Let me just turn, let me drop that right foot, put it in the dirt, pivot, turn my man. Again, just it's sometimes not the prettiest or the most overly complicated thing. Just keep your body in between you and the defender. Like that's, or keep yourself between the quarterback and the defender. Like that's it. And that little turn at the end to have the functional technique and strength to do it, but more so the awareness in that rep to start feeling what's going on and then be like, no, and turn a little bit and keep his body in between. Real nice play.
Yeah. And here's another one where he's anchoring, extending on this one. He gets good hand placement on this one. And then you see him lock out right there. And then again, just firm pocket. Look at the quarterback. Quarterback has all day back there off of play action. Another really good rep where he's able to anchor a little more power in his upper body here, but you can see him lifting that guy up again and just anchoring down, being firm in that pass protection so the ball can get out.
Firm is a good way to put it, and at 6'4", and a little bit of change, and 305 pounds, like he's got that ability to neutralize and cancel out, dudes from the second defender or from the second level or guys who are a little bit on that undersized piece. And you see it on this one, like his ability to just drive him into the dirt. Again, I knew he wasn't the biggest or the strongest or the fastest or most athletic, but I just kept coming away impressed with, some of his strength or some of his athleticism. And I think it's really tied to his understanding and his technique and his ability to play with leverage, even though he's not the biggest or strongest or most athletic guy. And you see it on that one too.
Yeah. And the thing with anchoring, it's, sometimes guys want to finish near the line of scrimmage. And so they're going to anchor, they're going to lock down. You saw Torrence do a lot of that near the line of scrimmage. Well, football's difficult, all right? It's not, you're not going to win every rep. Every rep's not going to be perfect. Every rep's not going to be technical. Well, this one, you can see it's like a 4-man slide, and the Bills do this a lot. And we saw a lot of issues with Saffold, especially in that Bengals game where they're locking the tackle and they're 4-man sliding to one side, which makes this guard, which again, this was Saffold struggling last year. It makes this guy more of like a pivot guy, because really, if you think about it, all these guys are sliding to the right. So he's got to account for this gap right here, but also this gap right here. So this guy really has a two-way go. He could go outside, he could go inside, right? And so this is very difficult for a guard. So initially that guy's slanting inside. So you get a power step. We call this a power step, where he takes that hard square step down the line of scrimmage, stay as square as you can, hold the firmness of the interior of the pocket right there. He does that very good, but you can see he's not quite down the cylinder of the body of that pass rusher quite yet. So he's still working there, but he got that inside hand outside, but you see that pass rusher knock it away. So now he just refits it out there, but then look right there. Now he's in perfect position. And yes, the pocket is collapsing on the quarterback, but watch what Broeker does. Boom, locks out. It's over. It's over. And so again, the play is not always going to be pretty. The technique's not always going to be perfect, but the process to get to where he did, we call this, instead of just anchoring, this is called anchor recovery. He's able to recover on this, again, very difficult pass protection. He's able to recover and lock down and anchor down at the doorstep of the quarterback, and the quarterback is still able to throw the ball. Unfortunately, he's not able to complete it to the wide open receiver.
Oh, and that wide open receiver was one of my loves, Jonathan Mingo. Godspeed to you in Carolina, Mr. Mingo. This one is, I love what you talked about, that recovery piece. It was one of the things we talked about with Peter Skoronski. Like you're not going to win every rep, especially initially. Like your initial plan might not work. You might think, you know what? I got this guy set up. I'm going to put my hand here. Everything's going to work. And then all of a sudden that defender chops it and you've only got one hand and you're like, uh-oh, what do I do? How do you recover in that moment? He starts to lose this rep. His hands are outside the frame of the defensive tackle. You talked about, he's not in like great position. He's not really in that cylinder of the defensive tackle like you talked about. So when you're losing that rep, you're on, your heels there. What do you do? His ability to sink. Look at where he gets his toes into the ground. He kind of arches back a little bit and kind of wrenches back. You see some of that strength, and then you see where the hands are. You see the ability to recognize and adjust in the moment and go, uh-oh, I'm in a little bit of trouble here. And he salvages the rep. Again, not as ideal as you like because he does get driven back a bit, but at the end of the day, he's able to withstand what's going on. He's able to anchor and stalemate and kind of win. And that defender is going to be pissed off because he had a big advantage and he lost it as the rep went on. So that's a good recovery from Broeker there, and not an easy one either.
Yeah, no, he surprised me when I watched his film. He's not a guy that I got to before the draft, but once the draft was over, to watch his film, I was impressed. And I'm excited because he's a guy that if he can somehow stick, if he can somehow compete with some of the offensive linemen and depth that the Bills have, maybe that makes someone else expendable, right? Maybe that allows Bean to flip one of these guys for a late round draft pick, which you've heard some of that talk about guys, piling late round draft picks because a lot of the undrafted money is getting higher than some of the actual picks at the end of the draft. Bean obviously has 10 picks now.
Yep.
So maybe he can get a decent pick for an offensive lineman because Broeker is a Cromer guy. And, he does compete enough to allow Bean to do something like that.
Yeah, those late round picks can be valuable with how the, UDFA money is turning a little bit and on the rise in terms of its, financial trajectory, and also just from a trade up ammo standpoint. Bean even talked about that, right? Like the ability to move up, let's say in a third round or a second round. It might cost you, a 6 or 2 or a couple of those late round picks, or maybe it costs you a 4th and a 5th, but because you got more picks on the back end, and if you have a strong roster, you're okay just, giving up some of those picks. So it just gives you more options. It gives you, more pliability and more fluidity in your strategy. And Bean has been, he got like a 6th for Daryl Johnson a couple years ago. Like he is really adept at having a position of strength on the roster and not just, cutting it down and not getting anything for it. Like, and if you can get anything, even if it, Broeker was a 7th round pick, if he sticks and you trade one of your other depth guys at that position for a 6th or a 5th, that's a huge win.
Huge.
You got a guy on the roster and you got to pick, ahead of where he was taken. Like you said, huge. That's good value. And again, I think there is legitimate potential. I know he's a 7th round pick, but this isn't a 7th round pick that was, whatever, we'll take him. Some people had a 5th round grade on him. I think he has an opportunity to compete and potentially stick, even though, again, like we talked about, interior offensive line and guard specifically does have a bit of a logjam.
Yeah, and so I'll apologize on behalf of us at the film room. I don't have film on Alex Austin. I wasn't able to cut it up and put it up in time, but I like his size, Anthony. 6'1", 195. I got to watch some of his film. I like his size. I think he was surprisingly good with his footwork up near the line of scrimmage. Now, when he was up near the line of scrimmage, it was that soft shoe type press, right? It wasn't him actually jamming guys at the line of scrimmage. I thought his footwork was very efficient in and around the line of scrimmage. But he did struggle at times when you start to go down the field with that man coverage. That mirror footwork is good inside that contact box, so closer to the line of scrimmage. But really, it's something we always talk about with these defenders in the secondary is his spatial awareness, his zone eyes, his zone awareness. He spaces the route concepts really, really well. Does a great job of helping his teammates too. When guys leave his zone, he continues to gain that depth, and it's something the Bills like to do, right? It's something that they've always stressed of, minimizing the deep ball and those explosive plays. I think he's very good when it comes to things like that and communicating. And that's another big thing with him. You always seeing him pointing guys out. Hey, he's running a hitch. There's a corner going behind him. I need to go ahead and jump that. Like he's very good communicating with his teammates.
Yeah, he seems like a heady dude, very spatially aware, very comfortable in zone, all things that normally translate well to the Bills secondary. Like you talked about, though, not the most explosive or, dynamic athlete, not the fastest, not the biggest, not the longest, not the strongest, but at 6'1", 195, he does have, a good size and some good, or a good frame and some good size on him. My big thing with this one is, especially after what Christian Benford became last year, I may be in the minority. I really liked what Christian Benford did last year. I might have even liked it more than what Kaiir Elam was at certain points. And for what I thought, we didn't have a lot of tape on Benford last year. The one game we really had was against Penn State. In the first play of the game, Jahan Dotson cooks him and turns him inside out. And we watched the rest of that game and we're like, okay. And Sean McDermott did what he's done in Philly and Carolina, and especially in Buffalo, which has taken defensive backs and turned them into something. And so for a guy who helped turn Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer into all-pros and Tre'Davious White into an all-pro and Taron Johnson from a 4th-round pick to one of the best nickel corners in the game, who took Levi Wallace and took him from a UDFA to a low-end CB2 with 2 teams in Buffalo and Pittsburgh. Dane Jackson, a low-end CB2 or a CB3. Christian Benford, a 6th-round pick who turned into like a number 2 corner last year in his rookie year. Just the success stories continue. DeMar Hamlin is one as well. anytime the Bills take any defensive back late on day 3, which they've continued to do these past several years, I'm always just intrigued, like my antenna go up a little bit, because McDermott has this track record of developing guys on the back end, even if
No
they
doubt.
are physically unimpressive or taken in spots that you wouldn't think, like, you know what, this 7th round pick is really going to be something. He's got a legitimately successful track record in taking guys on the back end who people didn't really think much of, and molding them, coaching them up, and getting them to maximize and even exceed some of their potential and ceiling. So for that alone, I'm intrigued. And then you add in the scheme fit and some of the things that he does well, and it'll be interesting in camp to see what we got, again, at a spot that doesn't really have a lot of area to succeed at corner, but we'll see what he can become.
Yeah, I just need him to be more assertive at the catch point.
Fair.
And then when you look at his advanced stats, I mean, he's got a 17.8% missed tackle rate.
Yeah,
you're not going to be playing a lot in this defense, again, even in the future. So you better shore that up. Again, apologize for not being able to cut it up and get it up there, but I don't know if we'd had enough time to break it down. Like, this was a action-packed show, and we actually had to start moving a little faster than we normally like to do. But man, this is a fun time of year for us. It's a lot of work, but it is fun to not only study the film and these draft picks, but also project their scheme fits, their usage. So make sure to pay attention to a lot of content on the YouTube channel and our social media, because we're still going to be studying these guys for the next few weeks. And you know what? There's time, because it's starting to get quiet now.
Yeah, we're starting to get into some quiet time a little bit. We'll get rookie mini camp and OTAs coming up in the rest of this month. We'll be breaking down pieces from that. But yeah, this is the real rewarding time as we kind of sit back a little bit and start to bring everything full circle. And it's funny, talking full circle, that somebody who, Eric, you, myself, and the rest of the Cover One team that was down in Mobile, we were sitting there on the final night at that seafood spot having an amazing dinner while O'Cyrus Torrence was behind us. I think with the Detroit Lions having dinner, or no, not with the Lions. I forget who we were.
No, he was there with his agent and like part of his crew, I think.
Okay, there you go. Oh yeah, the Lions were in the front when we first entered.
Yeah, they had the big table right at the front.
Huge, all squatted up.
And then there was Andrew Berry.
I was gonna say,
by himself
with
nobody, having dinner by himself when all of his personnel are in town. And the GM of the Browns is sitting there by himself. It didn't
super make weird. Sense. You had a bunch of the Steelers staff there together, and the Lions, and then here's Andrew Berry just all by himself in the Browns. It's funny to see how everything, kind of came full circle a bit just with that, Torrance pick. We were sitting there at dinner talking about who we were most impressed with, and there was Darnell Wright, who we've talked about a bunch. Huge. But O'Cyrus Torrence came up a bunch at the house where we were staying, at dinner multiple nights, and it's cool for this offseason, at least for me, being my first one that I went to Mobile and had the opportunity to go there, with the team this year. It was just awesome to see that whole process come full circle, and a guy that we talked about and broke down, at Mobile, see him end up on the Buffalo Bills roster, in addition to the rest of these players who we broke down tonight. And like Eric said, we'll continue to break down on our socials. Make sure you have the Cover One handle added. That's at Cover and the number 1. Make sure you have Eric's personal account at Eric J. Turner. I'm on Twitter at pro__ant. And then, of course, tune in live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, here in the Cover One Film Room for the show that legitimately, I'm not pumping us up. Nobody does it like we do when it comes to X's and O's and scheme and film. That is a big time negative. Eric, before we send us on our way, any final thoughts or notes of wisdom for anyone?
Hey, great engagement today. We appreciate everyone tuning in. If you guys aren't insiders, please subscribe to our premium content. Join the Slack channel. We couldn't do this without you. All of these tools that we use today, advanced data, the Telestrator, Huddle, stats, everything, even just a platform to just watch us is paid for by you guys. All right. It's paid for you by our insiders, our subscribers. We couldn't do it without you guys. So get to cover1.football, subscribe to our content, and, again, support us, because we wouldn't be able to do this without you. And again, it takes a lot of work to get to this point. It takes a lot of work to get in these film rooms. It takes a lot of research and studying and cutting and editing. And it's all stuff that you guys pay for.
Absolutely. We would not be here without you folks. So thank you to everyone and your continued or new support for us on this channel. And on this brand. Thank you to everybody who joined us live. The engagement and live viewership was awesome in tonight's episode. Thank you very much for the back and forth with one another, the back and forth with us, the questions for us. Thank you, Ned, for the super chat. We appreciate you folks more than you will know. If you're watching this later, post live, that's cool. Thank you for your post live view. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Thank you for your listen, your download, wherever you are. If you're here on YouTube watching live now or later, please, 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 and thank you. Drop a like on this video. We still got almost 200 heads in this room right now. It would be awesome to see that kind of count reflected in the like count as we process this video and upload it. So whether here live or watching later, please drop a like. Podcasting apps and platforms, rate and review. If you're listening on podcasting apps or platforms, watching here on YouTube, please subscribe to the Cover One Film Room. Subscribe to the channel as a whole. We got you covered every single day of the week with tremendous content here on Cover One. We appreciate you folks more than you will know. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. We will see you next week, live Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of the Cover One Film Room. And for myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Eric Turner, we are out. Godspeed. We'll see you next week. And as always, go Bills.